Riverbend Meats, couple parcels of real property and personal property. I'm assuming you're the one who signed the protest.
I signed the protest.
Okay, you signed the protest. Have you guys been to a Board of Equalization hearing prior?
Once in the last 10 years.
Okay, I'll refresh.
Never in my life.
I'll refresh your memories of your house.
Was I at one?
Yeah.
Was I? Okay. Not that I remember.
Many years ago, but the process that the assessor goes through every year is he's required by state statute to bring all properties up to current market value. I think you're aware of that because your appraisal went through the state statutes. He sends out a notice, and if you disagree with that, you have the opportunity to file an appeal to the three commissioners sitting as Board of Equalization. We'll hear the information we get today from first from you, and then we'll hear from the assessor's office on their method of appraisal. We'll try to come to a conclusion, make a decision. If you're unhappy with that, you'll have the opportunity to appeal to the State Board of Tax Appeals. They can be here in September, and with any decision, whether you like it or dislike it, we'll give you all the information to appeal that. So to begin with, get everybody sworn in. So, do each of you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So to begin with, we'll try to, we've got an hour, which is
nice.
We've extended the time because of this. I hope we don't have to use it all. Maybe get your appraiser to kind of put the high points and the points that he thinks are key. All of this will be made part of the record. Then take the time you need to present your case. Then we'll have the assessor do the same, and then we'll have a period for questions, answers. We may interrupt along the way if we have some. So I'm pretty close to early, so I forget to something. I usually need to get my questions answered right away. So, okay, I don't know who's speaking. Is that Brian or Frank?
I'm going to go first if I could.
Okay.
First, thank you for the good job that you guys do for the county. I've always been impressed with how this county is run. We made a decision to, I'm a county guy. We've built a lot of facilities in the county, and we've had options to, of course, build in the city. We've always chosen the county for, I think, good reasons that I won't go into here. It's just it's been our decision. We think we've done a lot of work. And hopefully we've done a lot of good in the county as we've extended sewer lines and gas lines and power lines that many other citizens are using, built at our expense, and at a considerable cost. That doesn't have anything to do with assessed value, but I bring it up just to say we want to be good citizens. The reason I'm showing up here today is because of the letter that we received from Hayden Mitchell that concerned me, and I want to give you guys each a copy of it. And I don't want to read too much into it, but it alarmed me. She says, your protest was received. This is addressed to Aaron, no, to David Dance, I'm sorry. As per our discussion Friday, it doesn't make a lot of sense to meet before the commissioners, as we don't really have enough time to review the appraisal you sent. I was just up discussing with Dustin Barron, and our thoughts are that it will be most likely be denied at the BOE level. You would receive a letter from the Commissioner's Office, which will supply the appeal form to the Board of Tax Appeals. This will give us enough time to review what you have provided and hopefully come to a resolution. If it does come to a PTA, the state rep will hold the meeting here locally, and it's typically held in September. We'll be in touch. So what concerned us all when we got that, oh my gosh, they've already decided that they're going to reject yes, they're going to kick it down the street to the state even before we've had it here. So my point is, I'm assuming conversations were had, and I'm just asking if the determination has already been made that we're going to kick this to the state. That I just asked for a fair hearing today. That we not
going to correct that because there was a conversations to decide this. It's representation. Typically, it might have been an internal conversation on what to do on that. These things historically have been difficult to say sometimes weren't prepared to analyze them, but we're here to hear that that's the case.
Yeah, that's all I'm hoping for. That minds are open, that we have a fair hearing today, and I'm comfortable that that's the intent. I just wanted to bring up that, anyway, that's what I thought I'd like to come and visit with you, because I think the discussion today is value based on cost, what it costs to build, or is the value based on market value? And I'm not a legal expert, but my understanding is I've hired some good legal counsel, and they've said it's this market value. It's not based on historical cost. So then I think, and I'm here to answer the obvious question of why would you build something that costs more than it's worth? We've been fully transparent with the Assessor's Office. We submitted all of our costs to build it. We didn't have to submit those. We did not have to submit that, but we did. And the facts will show that the assessed value from a professional assessor that has tremendous credentials, and I think that you'll find him knowledgeable on the topic and qualified, extremely qualified to make this appraisal. His appraisal is $64 million, and it cost us $129 million to build, which is just $1 million more than twice. So why in the world?
Can I interrupt you with a question there? Because this is the listed cost that you sent over, and I show the total cost of even 160 some odd million to build.
That's with equipment as well.
It's all with.
That's their total with the real property on.
Yeah, but the personal property was, well, maybe they're all mixed in.
Yeah, they're mixed in with the pages.
Okay, the real property was 121.
With land, yes.
With land, okay. Just needed to clear that up.
And that appraisal of mine is only real property.
Real property. So the assessment notice we sent out at 129 is the real property and the personal.
No, just the real property.
Just the real, okay. Just want to make sure we know what we're looking
I
at.
don't think, is the personal property under the real line?
It is.
It's a separate.
Okay, that's the RPE.
So I came here to answer what I think an obvious question. Why would a guy, maybe with a little, with any business acumen at all, build something that's going to cost twice as much as it's worth? And the first, so I want to explain that. It'll take me, hopefully, get through it pretty fast. I'm 75 years old. I got maybe a decade, maybe, like productive life left. I've got more resources than I need, more resources than I deserve. I don't need more resources. But I find a time in my life when I have to feel like I need to do something good. I've been blessed more than anybody should ever be blessed. I'm not complaining, but I feel guilty if I don't do something good with it. So I've had a goal for a long time to build a beef plant. Why? Because of the status of the beef industry in America. For the last 20 years, it's been controlled by 4 processing facilities. You couldn't get your beef to be processed. You just couldn't get it done. We tried. You were backed up for maybe years before you could even get a slot. We went out to find beef processors. No one would process our beef. And JBS, they've had their way with the ranchers, and they've depressed prices, and basically they've been raping the ranchers for the last 2 decades. JBS, Cargill, Tyson, National Beef Packing. We're not the only ones who saw that. And they've been reaping in the last 2 decades profits beyond anything that the industry's ever seen, to the tune of $350 to $500 per carcass profit, okay, by keeping prices depressed. I want to do something about it. That's something I can do with my resources. And this thought strikes me has struck me a lot. I think that prosperity will test our character more than poverty ever could. And I want to pass the test. So what did I do with all these blessings? And then the question, if I don't do it now, when shall I do it? It won't be in my lifetime unless I do it now. We started this right after the beginning of COVID. We didn't know what COVID was going to do to us. We had no idea. We knew, it was challenging, but we had no idea what was going to hit us in supply chain issues and the things we ran into. We tried to get quotes. What it would cost us to build. It was impossible to get quotes. You could get a quote that would last for 30 days. And it had all these contingencies in it, all these fudge factors that your quote was of no value. So we said, okay, let's just get busy. It'll cost us what it costs us, and we'll build it. We got started because we did a design build. Build as you go. I hired a great guy to build the plant. He ran the second largest plant for JBS. His name is Jay Rawlings, and he was the general manager for JBS. And I brought him in. He hadn't built plants before, but he didn't run a plant. So I brought him in to build the plant. I'm sure we made lots of mistakes. But once we got started and we heard, oh my gosh, this is going to cost us a lot more than we anticipated. We turned in, I think it was April 1st, 2021, we turned in our building permit. I think it was for 30 million. Is that right? 30 million. We anticipated that that was going to be the cost of our plant without equipment. Well, it's ended up being many more times than that. But once we got started in it, we couldn't back out. And the reason we couldn't back out is because everything was getting backed up. Prices were going higher. You couldn't get steel. You couldn't get concrete. You couldn't get trucking. We decided to go with concrete tip-up panels because that would be the most durable. We want to build something that's going to last. They are more expensive. They cost about twice as much as a typical building would cost. You don't get, if I was going to sell the building, I would have never built that. But I'm not, I've set it up so it won't ever be sold. It's to be run by a trust after I'm gone. And I wanted to leave something of a legacy that would benefit the beef industry and the ranching industry for a long time. So these tip-up panels, just to give you a few ideas, what they cost, 750 panels, none of them built anywhere around here. In case you don't know, this is a tough place to build something. It costs a lot more to build something here because these companies that build these kind of buildings, like buildings of great, of this nature, you don't have everything right here. We had to truck in these panels from Bakersfield, California. Some came from Sunny Slope, Washington. Don't ask me where that is, but I do know this. 750 panels. 995,000 miles we drove to truck in these panels. During the time of COVID, when you couldn't get trucks, there were over 100 containers backed up. During this period that we were building our plant, 100 containers backed up in Los Angeles that couldn't offload because there were no drivers to take them. There were no trucks. But we paid premiums to drive our plant got built. Our trucks ran. But it wasn't free. There's all kinds of surcharges to make that happen. But you say, well, why did you just not stop? When you saw this happen, why did you just not stop? Good night. Couldn't stop because there were several other processing plants that were starting up right about the same time. We were not in first place. There's only certain companies that make this kind of equipment to process meat. And only certain companies that make all these chains, these cattle, there's only a couple of them, and they were backed up. And if we said we'll stop, then we get moved out several slots, which puts us back several years being able to build. And again, I had maybe 10 years left. So when we already started, you mothball it. Now, do you ever get to start up again? So we said, and we had these discussions, should we pull the plug on this? Or should we keep it going? I said, I got this one life. I'm going to get it done. And so we built it. We had to put in 9 miles of gas line. We thought we had natural gas right there. Based on the conversations we had, there was not going to be a problem. You could tap in. Whoops, wait a second. Type of boilers that they finally scoped out for us. you need high pressure gas lines. So we laid 9 miles, we paid for it. We paid for it, 9 miles of gas line. I think the gas company paid for, I don't know, 10% or something. But we put it in, who'll benefit from that? Lots and lots and lots of businesses and companies will be able to tap into that line. Something like we did for the sewer system that we built, that all the way from Shelley, ran that sewer system all the way up to our plant at our cost. And then we extended it clear over to the Chevrolet dealer, and all kinds of companies are tapping into that. So my point is, we endured the cost. We think it's worth it. We think we're doing a good thing. We think it's valuable. But when you look for market value, there's no company going to go pay for all that stuff. It's not something you get on your market value. But it's in those costs. Nobody's going to consider what it costs to run those trucks. We upgraded several power stations, substations, that just didn't have the power. And again, I think the community will benefit from that. It's in our, they charged us to do it, but we won't be the only ones that benefit from it. I hope I'm not coming across as angry. I'm not angry. I'm animated because I've been shocked that we're talking about using cost as the basis to appraise our facility.
Can I encourage you to, because we do need some time on this, but I think we can stipulate the economic conditions at the time and the extreme costs with COVID, supply chain, things like that. I think that's very understandable.
I'll mention a couple other final comments. I'll make it quick. We didn't have one negative comment from community on any of our permits. I thought that was noteworthy. Air quality, wastewater, irrigation. We built in the county, not in the city. And I don't know what the appraiser did on this, but I don't think he discounted it enough. With that really, the bind that puts us in to assign any kind of a market value to it. No one's going to buy this plant. No one would buy this plant. I didn't buy it. I didn't build it to sell it. The reason they're not going to buy it is because they'd have to buy all the surrounding land, all the surrounding property around it, and they got to buy the cattle for, and that's 170,000 head of cattle. At approximately, when they're finished, $3,000. I haven't done the math, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of cattle you got to buy in advance. You'd have to buy the cattle, and you'd have to buy the surrounding ground. You have to buy all the feedlots. You don't have to buy. You can rent some feedlots out, but the feedlot that's right there, you got to own it. No one's going to come in and buy this. I don't think we discounted. I'm not sure what the discount was. The fact that we built in the county, it's not in commercial ground. It's on farm ground. It's an ag enterprise.
And let me interject there, because I just understood that you can only run your own cattle through this.
Right.
So somebody couldn't buy this, bring in outside cattle and have.
Can't do toll processing. There's lots of things from a business perspective that it's not, and I don't know what the discount was placed on that. I understand not much of a discount, but in my mind, should have been a major discount because I can't sell it. If we're really going in and
we jump in and have him respond to a couple of these before.
Let me make two more comments and I'll be done.
All right.
Okay. I'm sure you've heard enough from me already. I just want to make a couple of things, and these are important things. It costs a lot more to build here, this county, than elsewhere, because we got to bring in all these builders. Our refrigeration people, we had to import here from Tennessee. During a time there was no housing. Electricians from Iowa, plumbers from Boise. And by the way, it costs just as much to bring them from Boise as it would have cost to bring them in from New York. Transportation is the housing is the expense. And you got to pay these guys big dollars to leave their families to come here. Equipment fabricators from Denver. I got 2 more pages, but I won't go into them. I'll just say this time for you. We've built a lot of facilities here. You've never assessed us on what it cost to build. If you would have, we'd have been forced to go build someplace else. I have facilities in Knoxville, Tennessee, space to build. I have, we bought the Harley-Davidson manufacturing facility in Kansas City. We're only using a third of that space. Good economics would say you should go there to build. Because I already got the building there. I'm talking about for manufacturing. It's more centrally located. There's all kinds of arguments. But I'm an Idaho kid, so I built it in Idaho. But I shouldn't be penalized because I did by some cost factor that should be market value. And I'm not planning on selling it. Never planned on selling it to any of them. No one would buy our office building. Who would buy that? You'd have to move your whole headquarters here, and it's just not going to warrant that kind of a price. We've always overpaid for the buildings we built because we aren't sellers. We're Idaho folks. So, and I'll close with this one thing. It has nothing to do with this. I'll just close with that. Now, then maybe I'll have a chance to get another point later.
I think you
I'm done.
probably
Thank
watched, thanks Frank, watched by our reaction to things that kind of caught our attention. I think we've addressed a couple, the conditions and basically the extra cost because of the time and things like that. Can you address how you account for those in your?
So fundamentally, cost is not equal value. You get to value by applying depreciation to cost. And if something is very well conceived and costs are controlled and so on, at the end of the day, cost may be a reflection of value without taking depreciation if there is no depreciation. But in this case, there is significant depreciation, not in the form of physical deterioration, because this is a brand new, state-of-the-art facility. It's very nice. It's an over-improvement. Over-improvement is a classical example of functional obsolescence. So depreciation has physical deterioration. It's made up of physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence, factors outside the property. Functional obsolescence is factors within the property. So, for example, I have a client who built a large home, 10,000 square foot home. They hit groundwater as soon as they dug the foundation. They had to put in 2 feet of gravel, put a blanket around their foundation, put sump pumps inside and outside their basement in the ground. And all in all, they spent $50,000. That was their first change order on a home. It added no value. And so if all you're looking at is cost without considering all forms of depreciation, physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, external obsolescence, you cannot get to market value. And I'm a former assistant professor adjunct at the University of Utah. I've taught appraisal classes for the Appraisal Institute. I know the fundamental principles of appraising.
How did you hire somebody from the University of Utah?
I was not consulted.
How did my children go to a blue school I never mentioned when they were growing up?
Okay. Slight deviation here.
So anyway, so you can start with cost, but that's the starting point, not an ending point. And so you have to analyze depreciation from all costs. The definition of depreciation is cost minus market value. So if you're not assessing depreciation when it applies, when it exists, you're not getting the market value. Cost does not equal value. The second thing is that market value is a hypothetical. Frank's not selling this facility. But we have to have a value as of January 1st of the tax year at issue. So we assume there's a sale. We assume a transaction between a buyer and a seller, both willingly entering into the transaction.
Can I interrupt? I had a question earlier. You said you finished it in early 23. When did you get your CO?
23.
When?
The certificate of occupancy. It was either the last week of the year or the first week.
Okay, so
We got it before the end of the year, I do know that.
all right. That's something I didn't quite.
We got it before the end of the year.
Okay.
We made sure we did. I mean, we were praying for it.
Okay.
So market value is a hypothetical construct. So how does the issue that this really can't be sold by itself, somebody would have to buy the cattle, somebody would have to buy the fields, I ignored it. I mean, in reality, that's probably a significant issue, but in the hypothetical construct of market value, I ignored it. I went to the market. So what does the market tell me? The market is telling me it's overbuilt, so there's functional obsolescence, for sure. I can give you countless examples. I can tell you about a unit train unloading facility in Virginia that was built because some huge corporation thought they could make a profit shipping Bakken oil out of North Dakota all the way to the East Coast because there wasn't a good way to get oil out of the Bakken. They spent $150 million on a facility, and by the time they got it built, pipelines had been constructed out of the Bakken. So they wrote off their $150 million. And these are smart people, but not everything works out as you would expect. Larry Miller builds a racetrack, the Miller Motorsports Park in Tooele County, and he built it so that it could have the best races in the world there. And it's in Tooele County. It didn't work. $100 million. $100 million. It was on land leased from the county. They gave the facility to the county at the end of their 10-year base term.
Don't get any ideas.
No, I was just saying, Miller was obviously a huge fan.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But so the point is, cost doesn't equal value. So when I do a cost approach, I'm going to try to eliminate the obsolescence factor by using replacement costs. So in my cost approach, I just said, let's look at what it would cost to replace this facility. And you wouldn't replace it with as much upgrade and over improvement as it has. If you look at my appraisal, I can just point to one chart that kind of is illustrative, I think, of what I'm talking about. It's on page 30. So on the bottom of the last line on that chart has production, or square feet daily unit production. So this is designed eventually to be able to process 600 head a day. But they're not close to that. There's a huge learning curve. It's very employee intensive, and they're maybe 25% of the way there at best right now. But in any event, it was built to be able to process 600 head, and they built 335 square feet per cattle capacity. But you look at the competition, Intermountain Meats, 140 square feet. CS Beef Factors, 206 square feet.
Per head.
No, square feet per head, yeah. And JBS Beef Plant, 127 square feet per head. And so they've got this huge facility that's far in excess of what other facilities are built as. And so if you're looking at this as a money-making opportunity, they're going to have to, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to put out a really, really fine steak that they can sell for a significant premium because they built such a fabulous facility, but it's way more than makes economic sense. So this is an example of the kind of over-improvement that leads to obsolescence, even beyond just the fact that they had cost overruns. So my cost approach eliminates the need to specifically measure that obsolescence by starting with replacement cost instead of reproduction cost. This is reproduction cost. And to do that, I went to the market and I said, okay, what are some of the costs? I've got some cost comparables in here. What did it cost to build facilities on page 33? And so other facilities with similar features, it cost $397 per square foot. My value is $300 per square foot. Land value is not very much, so that's almost all construction costs. So the first comparable was almost $400. The second comparable around $200. $250, $313. So that's what it costs to build a site, a facility where you don't have unusual cost overruns due to COVID and related impacts. And due to just wanting to have a state-of-the-art facility that you'll never recoup your money, but you have a monument out there that will bless generations, especially with all the utilities I've done. And then I also looked at a cost publication called Marshall Valuation Service, and based on those cost comparables and what Marshall Valuation Service tells me, here's what it should have cost. Here's what it cost, here's what it should have cost. It's worth what it should have cost. Brand new facility, you take out the obsolescence by going with replacement costs.
And is that where you came up with 62 million or 64 million?
That was a $67 million number. We did an income approach. We went out and found rent comparables for facilities like this. They typically don't rent. And that was a much lower number, 40 some odd million, 47 million. We didn't give that much weight. And then we found sales of these types of production facilities. And those are on, those are summarized on page 46 of my report. And they sold from $164 up to $340 per square foot. And I go through the traditional adjustment process like you would if you were appraising a home. If you're appraising a home that has a garage and you have a sale that has a carport, you're going to make an upward adjustment because the garage is better. So I've done that for every one of these sales. And they came in at around 62 million. And we reconciled to a value 61.3. We reconciled to that 60.
Can I ask you?
What did you say the 67? What did you call that?
The cost approach value was $66,900,000.
According to
That's my estimate of recovery.
you use some system.
I used cost comparables, what it actually cost
Marshall.
and Marshall valuations.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question, when I was reading through this, and I tried to find it and I couldn't, you made a statement in here that this was done for the purpose of ad valorem tax valuation. So something to the effect of you did that in order to be able to provide a value for property tax.
So the first step of every appraisal is to identify the intended use of the appraisal, the intended users, the correct valuation date.
And that's the way I read it. So I guess my question is, did that alter how you would do an appraisal for any other, to be able to sell for any other?
No, it's market value is market value is market value. Okay. But I don't know if you've heard of the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. That's our standards we as appraisers must follow. And it says you have to identify the intended use.
And that's why that statement.
And that's why that statement is there.
Okay.
But
it wouldn't have been any different if you'd have been hired to value it for a sale, or for a buyer that came to you and said, do an appraisal so I can buy this.
or a lender, or even if I was hired by the county, because I've done work for Canyon County on food processing, meat processing facilities, and this is market value.
And we alter our processing. I'd like the assessor right now to give me a chance to figure out if there's anything else in there. You've heard quite a bit about their approach.
Yeah, and we're primarily, I guess our goal is to arrive at the most accurate value that we can. And we have utilized cost primarily solely because we don't have any market sales of any plants. And even looking at the comparables that we used, it seems like it's primarily storage facilities that are utilized in the market sales. So because we're looking for essentially the bit of information, whether it's market, cost, or income, the cost was our best information. That's what we had. We have actual cost, that's what we utilize. Now certainly, it seems like there's probably some super adequacy where you overbuilt. And I think at that point, the goal would be to try to find what that number is. You indicated there were 750 panels that you brought in, and what that cost would have been had you gone with what was necessary, not necessarily what you wanted. And obviously that the overbuild brings more value than it would if it was just what was needed, but I guess the challenge would be discovering what that super adequacy is. I agree that cost is going to be depreciated out. There shouldn't be any depreciation for physical, because it's not, it's a brand new building. But certainly, as you mentioned, you know, the overbuild, essentially a super adequacy, we can account for that, try to figure out what that amount would amount to. It seems like there was also some questions when we met a couple weeks ago, an issue with the wastewater, and you guys have been able to account for that because you utilize that wastewater in the fields around the facility, and that's obviously not something that somebody will be able to. I guess I don't have a full understanding, and this may be something you guys can help me out with, is I guess I'm not aware of how a meatpacking facility would work. I guess is that not every instance of a meatpacking plant do they have farms right around where the cattle are right there on the grounds and come right in. So in those instances, in most instances, do they truck those cattle in? And if that's the case, why would that not be an option in this instance?
Well, you could hook into the water sewer system like the other folks did, and then you're burdened to the sewer system.
And they could probably answer that one, because at the time they were getting the building permit, they were only allowed in that zone to process the animals that they raised.
Okay.
And otherwise, that's why they can't bring any cattle in from any other private source.
Zoning restrictions.
And that goes back to the kind of function that you talk about. It's all together, hard to separate out.
It's designed to be an integrated operation, vertically integrated, which is both its strength potentially, and of course its market value challenge.
Yeah, and certainly that's not, again, if we had market sales of a meatpacking plant, we would certainly use those. And I can understand the use of trying to find market sales. It just seems like in most instances in the comparables that we use, they're primarily storage facilities. And while you guys, of course, have storage facilities and meatpacking or cold storage facilities, you know, it's not a direct comparison.
It pretty much is. It's the equipment that sets it apart, not the building. The building is very, I've done cheese factories in Canyon County, I've done meat processing in Canyon County, and the refrigerator space is what's very expensive. Drainage in the floors is expensive. HVAC, of course, keeping it cool. That's all common. That's typical of my comp. Is a cheese factory comparable to a meat processing? It actually is, because they have to have the same cleanliness, they have to have the same drainage, they have to have all this stuff the same. But what sets it apart is the equipment they bring in. So that's a whole separate issue, and you just have to make sure that your building is designed that you can run your equipment the most efficient. But these are very much, so the question of comparability is, are you in the same industry generally, and food processing is, and these are that.
You mentioned on your cost, utilizing using current production costs, or the current production, you said it's just kind of getting started, so production may be down quite a bit from what you were.
No, I'm using maximum.
Okay.
They're doing 150 head. My calculation is based on 600 daily, and it still is, you know, 2.5 times larger than the competition. So it's easy to say, okay, you had cost overruns, let's eliminate those. But it's more than that. It's also that the over improvement does not add up. I don't know, you've probably seen $25 million homes that go on the market and they sell for $4 million because it's an over improvement. The market won't take it.
Yeah, again, the reason we're utilizing that cost is because it's our best information, because it's the actual cost. That's how industrial is valued.
So I have a question on that. I understand that where you didn't have anything else to go on, but when you have an appraisal, how much value would you put on that if you have a certified appraisal of the value of the building, the market value of the building?
On the appraisal, so generally what we would do is utilize the comps included in the appraisal. You know, obviously we want to we seek appraisals primarily with residential, but we'll see appraisals all the time through the appraiser. And well, generally our focus is going to be on the comps used. And theoretically, ideally, they are comparable. It's a little different with homes because we do a little bit of, we do mass appraisal instead of the appraisal, so we're not trying to find and doing the take and give, like you mentioned, this home has a larger garage door or anything. But generally, we're not going to focus too much on the actual appraisal. We're going to utilize the information that's included in the appraisal. Our costs, obviously, your cost came in at $67 million, is that right?
Yeah, the cost approach value, not cost, the cost approach value.
That's the one we call the marshal valuation.
And actual costs of similar properties elsewhere.
Are you familiar with that marshal evaluation tool?
I mean, we use Marshall and Swift, but I'm not familiar with the Marshall.
It's the same,
You said actual cost of other similar facilities?
yes.
Okay. Intermountain, the other one on Iona, reported their cost as well, and their building cost per square foot is $625. Your actual building cost provided comes at about $670, so you are a little bit higher than them, but not down to like 300.
I'd have to look it up.
But they also have, there's some sunken costs that they referred to out here with that, sewer.
No, I totally understand that, so like I'm saying, as he said, we understand that there's probably some super adequacy, but as far as an actual cost, even closer to town that doesn't have those issues, is still a similar cost as well.
How big is that facility?
About 40% the size of yours, they're about 77,000, so
Size is huge.
And what's the number of head they're approved for?
500, so similar capacity.
The point that, I don't know, you can make that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
obvious
40% the size, and yet it has almost the same capacity. 80%. And if you start building big, like 200,000 square feet, the cost per square foot should go way down compared to 80,000 square feet. And so that's not a one-to-one comparison.
So that's something too.
And I think the 500 head at 80,000 square feet kind of tells you, wow, this is a lot of facility for what they're going to be able to do. Too much facility.
One point I learned in this process, I'd like to just clarify that maybe it's old news for everybody else, but there's looking at like the state's county assessor handbook and some of those things. We're talking about cost, and it's not our position that cost isn't relevant, but we're talking about replacement cost is calculated. And the comment in both the law and in the assessor's manual is regarding historic cost. There's just a brief paragraph, and I'm sure you know it, but it says that historic cost is generally not regarded as an accurate indicator for most types of property, and it goes into why replacement cost or other measures of cost are relevant. So we've used cost, the appraisers use cost, we think that's relevant. Of course, we don't think historic cost is the right way to get to market value. I think that's the key point coming through.
Well, and I think in the manual, that's because the vast majority of your properties in the county aren't going, the cost approach isn't going to be the best use. And you got market, which is going to be the primary source for the majority of the properties in the state, in each county. So if you have market sales, you're not going to utilize cost. Similarly with most commercial buildings, you're utilizing income. We're always going to try to utilize the information that we have the best information for.
That's what I mean by cost is. It talks about replacement cost, which is historic cost versus original cost versus other costs. And I'm saying cost, yeah, I'm with you. It's a relevant category. But historical cost is going to be a rare occasion given as assessment that's relevant.
And I guess the reason why you're going to find that utilized in Idaho, well, I can only speak to the state of Idaho, but most of your industrial properties in the state of Idaho are going to be utilizing that cost approach because we're not going to have income approach. And generally with these unique properties, we're not going to have market sales. Right. We will, but that's not going to be the best accurate information because on cost, we're getting reported costs and then we have schedules to appreciate those out. So that's
and I know that's what you guys asked for, but the statute says the rules shall require the use of reproduction or replacement costs less depreciation as opposed to historic costs, not just in the handbook, but in the state law.
You just said
It
reproduction,
discounts
but you also
historic.
just said this was reproduction.
We're utilizing all three approaches in this instance in most industrial instances because they're unique properties. The method that carries the most weight, that has the best information or that most accurate data is going to be that cost because the direct cost reported directly from the owner. The market is going to be
You say utilize three for the other two.
market and income. So market's gonna be utilizing sales of similar properties, and I guess
But
that's,
in this case, you just use cost, right?
in this instance, the 126 is based off of.
And that's just historic costs, not replacement.
You know, let me clarify, you have basically no income yet, correct?
No positive.
Oh, actual making money?
Yeah,
They're not making money.
that's.
We won't make money for years.
So if you use that, if you use income, then you're in the red.
So there's business income and there's real estate income.
Typically, it's by leased building, so we, even at our last informal meeting, we both agreed that income is just not comparable. We both have agreed to that, that's just.
So in this instance, if we don't have comparable sales, and we don't have income, then obviously we're placing the weight on the cost, which is actual reported cost. Now, I agree, it's obviously been brought to our attention that there is super adequacy. You have certainly overbuilt. And now I feel like the question is to what degree, and it seems like.
Isn't the question, what do we sell it for? Is that the definition of market value?
And that's what I wanted to ask the assessor. When you use all three approaches, what's the number you're after? Are you after what it will sell in the market?
Yeah.
You're after what the value is to the owner if you was to sell the property.
Right, and if we had two plants that had just sold that were identical in every way with the same issues and the same challenges, it would be very easy to utilize what the market would, you know what I mean, what it would sell for. If you had two exact identical plants with every struggle that you guys have and they both sold, certainly you could utilize two market sales to determine that, or like we used, or like you've used, you know, comparable properties and, you know, again, but we're utilizing cost because that's the best.
So in fairness to the assessor, you gotta realize that how many commercial properties, industrial properties you have? Hundreds, right? And I think it makes a lot of sense as a starting point. If you're doing mass appraising, you have to simplify it. But I think that's why the appeal process works, because Frank can come here and say, wait a minute, I hired an appraiser. I know I've spent way more than I can ever get out of this property. And I think that's why we're here. And I don't fault the assessor's office for going where they went, because they're dealing with hundreds of commercial properties, not to mention all the residential properties.
Well, I will also say something we obviously lack is market sales. And we did reach out to our state representatives, and they're reaching out, and are even a source that allows us to reach out further. And we've done that, and I think that's kind of going back to the comment, like the guidance we received from the state wasn't that it would be denied, but in most instances, these kinds of things are denied. I'm guessing that's where that line came from, and I apologize that. But we have, ideally, we'll get market sales, and obviously that's not helpful for us today. We don't have anything remotely similar to your facility right now. That's what we.
Let me jump in and see if we can kind of pull this thing into focus, because, you know, when they do an appraisal, the rules and law kind of put the burden on the taxpayer. You know, they give the benefit of the doubt to the assessor, the assessment to the defendant, and then the burden is on the taxpayer to disprove that. In this case, and we have to look at what you consider the preponderance of evidence in these hearings. I'm sitting here, where would you think the preponderance of evidence is?
If we could,
if you could, would you say that the state is going to give you some information, maybe?
we've reached out to all of our sources to try to find some.
Have you received any other yet?
We have not, so the only information we have available to us right now are
What you
what costs.
I have, but I've been making a lot of notes. You know, it's a little difficult, but if we're in the position of having to make a decision on the preponderance of evidence, they've made a pretty compelling case here. And what stands out is this partial evaluation of $67 million on that. You know, all the other factors play into it. You know, the say, not being able to separate it. This is a unique facility because you have to own all the cattle, you have to own the land that raises the cattle. It's an integral part of that. And how you come up with a value with that. To me, what they come up with this Marshall evaluation is probably about as fair as I've heard so far on this, unless you've got anything that you can advocate.
No, again, other than we're using actual costs, we're using the costs that were reported.
And they've also put on record enough of the conditions, economic conditions of the time. Even the $25 million home is to sell for more than market value. Generally, when they come and take something to the state, we watch the state and just kind of think, okay, here's what you put on it, here's what you guys want, and then they'll split it. That's usually what I go in thinking ahead, that after hearing this, I'm not convinced that's the right approach. Unless you get into a very detailed analysis of what we're trying to separate out the cost of the feedlots and the production, because they're all part of that. Because all those costs that they put in there have to do with feedlots, with the waste from the feedlots, things like that. And I don't know if we have any information to dig into that.
Right, and that's the thing, like, if it's $60 million and if you've overbuilt by $64 million.
The other thing that kind of caught my attention is the plastic, on the one out by the wrecking yard, being that close. And if this were the $67 million, that's pretty close to proportional to production-wise, which is a major factor.
I do think if both of them were to be on the market today, your facility would sell for significantly more than that facility.
But
Maybe not for
because you had to buy all that. So you can't operate it. You can't on the market.
It is the building that has to be marked, it is the
Yeah, I don't know.
ranch land.
I wasn't aware that there were limitations to only being able to utilize.
And by way of disclosure, we were approached on the building permit, whether that would be appropriate in that zone, and we agreed that it was. So that's why we're familiar with it. But I'd like to recommend on this one that we go to 66.9 on the Marshall evaluation.
Well, before I share my thoughts on it, I meant to do a hearing and I completely forgot. But I did receive a phone call from Frank on January 30th. He asked me, he said, I just want some clarification on the process for appraisal. And he said, is market value used? And I said, yes, market value is used. And then I immediately said, I know you have a hearing coming up. I'm not able to really discuss anything. He did disclose to me, he says, well, we have an assessment, should I bring it? And I said, bring everything you want. I don't want to know your number. And he didn't disclose it to me. I said, I can't make any predetermination. He said, I totally understand that. He said, that's not what I wanted to do calling you. But I wanted it on the record that I had that ex parte conversation.
On the record, because you said January 30th.
June 3rd. He may have called it June.
We're all getting into that age where
I believe it was June. But with that said, I went into this completely determined to be as impartial as I can and look at the facts. And I'm looking at two things. Number one, where it's not a commercial zone structure, it is only an ag zone. And so it can only be run by the individual that owns all the capital and owns the home. And then number two, I agree a little bit with Commissioner Christensen in that the best evidence that we have here of the value is the appraisal stuff. And when you told me that you're looking for what it would sell on market value, how can I not lean toward what appraisal was done? I wanted to see if you fudged the numbers for a purpose of tax, because you made some reference to that was the purpose in your report.
As required.
When I read that, I thought, well, that concerned me a little. but I'm satisfied with the answer that I was given, why that was in there. So,
You understand what we're talking about by preponderance of evidence? We could ask the attorney.
I understand.
Okay. Anyway, is that a motion then?
So, yeah, I would make a motion that we use the appraisal, the official appraisal was done on it, determine that there's value.
Treatment met.
60, but the number that I pulled out was 66,900,000. That's what I have. Yeah, that's the one I.
Well, this isn't really as difficult for me. Because at one point in one of my earlier lives, I did complete restoration on a 1972 Toyota Corolla 4-door, which, when I was finished, was showroom ready. For my daughter to drive to school, which survived about 3 months. And when the insurance adjuster for the young man's family who demolished Toyota Corolla came and looked at the car, he said, "You know what book value on this is?" I said, "Yeah, $300-400. He said, "You know what it's worth?" He said, "To me or anybody else?" He said, "To anybody who take time to look at what kind of restoration this was." And he said, "I may catch some trouble for this, but here's a check for $6,000 and you can keep the car." Which he didn't have to do. He recognized there was something beyond the book value.
So hurry up, we still have a personal property to deal with in 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, now with this decision, just so you understand, because I think the assessor understands, they also have the right to appeal this to the state if they gather up the other information. So we won't be, we won't be discussing any of the information with you until we on our decision on this, if that's okay. But you do have the same right to appeal any of our decisions that the taxpayer does. So we'll be filling out the paperwork. Now the personal property, I assume, is going to be a little bit less complicated because that's usually a matter of filling out a schedule. And tell me why you're appealing that.
So we provided 2 sets of information. We provided sort of our official submission.
When you turn in the IRS and when you have in books.
Not quite so complicated. And we turned to one Excel sheet to follow their format with the official submission, and we got background data. And a lot of what was used in the assessment was sort of the background data that we transparently provided. But if you look in there, some of it still says estimate. It was, then current estimates of where we were running. So it's attached this background, but our official property tax submission was at $25 million for personal property tax, which at cost, which we think is appropriate for personal property, would be approximately $25 million number. I'm assuming that looking through our backup data, they combined a few categories and basically put a different cost number. But it was our intent to include everything relevant for cost for personal property.
So just looking at what they submitted, I did not catch that they were different numbers on both forms, the Excel and the form submitted. So that was an error on my part to just even question it. But looking at the submitted office furniture fixtures category,
Yeah, we submitted 3 points.
where is it? I don't know, that page is missing on mine. They submitted the 4 within the Excel page. The last line of values was what was listed on the Excel category. Those matched what was submitted on the form. The 627, 759, and the 1.7 million. Those matched exactly. So just going forward, I use that same column of numbers for the machinery and equipment And what we're seeing now is there's about 17% difference on those pieces of equipment from what is reported on this page to what was submitted on this form. Don't know where that 17% came from. It's not listed on here as well as to why that number differs.
You guys appreciate that, those assets after the first year.
No, that's our purchase price.
Because when we utilized the category that you did submit on our form, we utilized, like she said, those last 4 sales, they matched exactly. It's just those, the remaining ones, you depreciate on that 17% on all. They were 17% exactly on
On every single, and then in addition, there was one piece of, or one item that was not included in that total. Number 185, equipment installation expense, that was 5.3 million. That was not included in the total. And as far as our code, installation equipment, sales tax, use tax, all that needs to be included in the acquisition cost. So I did have to pick up that item as well. It was not previously listed on.
So the installation cost, we didn't understand that to be included.
Yeah, Title 63, Chapter 6, 602 KK, yeah, acquisition cost should include the purchase price of new or used, cost of freight and shipping, the cost of installation, engineering, erection, or assembly, and sales and use taxes. So
we'd be happy to.
So that's at least half of the difference there, and then the 17% was not made clear on there, so I didn't know what that was for.
This analysis that we provided in terms of backup has got, contract variance adjustments and a whole lot of other burden costs. We'd have to get with our accounting guys to break down each of those columns and how they relate. This was our actual cost for the equipment less installation.
Like I said, I didn't catch that they were different numbers, so that I should have questioned it at the time when I did receive it to get that clarification.
So maybe, just thinking through this one, might be best for us to deny this one, give you the chance to work out the differences at the state appeal level if you choose to. That gives you both of you time to sit down and try to get the right numbers. And if you come to an agreement, a lot of times if you file it with the state, you don't have to go to that agreement, you can settle it before that. Is that all right?
Yeah, if I understand it correctly, so there was an error made in what was turned in.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was an error, except that we didn't.
There was essentially 2 different numbers submitted, and looking at the one, it matched the bottom numbers, but the other category in machinery and equipment didn't, but I didn't catch that they were different than what was on the other page. So they submitted 2 numbers essentially.
It's hard for us to understand exactly what the right number should be then at this point.
We could discuss it, we can resolve it for you.
No.
And it sounds like the installation cost is something we need to talk about.
So this makes it true, it comes here, we deny it, it goes to the state. But not for the first one, for the second one. So it was partially for the first one. Okay? Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to repeat.
To deny the appeal on this one.
On the personal property, personal. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Frank. Matt Dash for the.
Before your next one.
Yeah.